Mike Murdock. The most honor I ever received from anybody in my lifetime was from Oral Roberts, the most famous preacher next to Billy Graham in the world. His ministry recorded 37 of my songs. We wrote theme songs together for their television ministry. He had an apartment for me on the 58th floor of the City of Faith. There's 4 things I learned from him. Number 1 was sowing a seed for a desired result. Number 2 was I should have expectation of a harvest every time I sowed a seed. Number 3 was interpreting my prayer language back in English. Every time I spoke in tongues, I should interpret it back in my English words. And number 4 was the necessity of repetition in my ministry. When I drove up 34 years old, 35, to the City of Faith, the Oral Roberts University, I was stunned. I'd never seen such greatness in my life. The prayer tower that turned every day, 24-hour prayers. The 58-story medical building called City of Faith. 4,000 students, Oral Roberts University, known for their basketball legend. I was stunned. While he was driving me around Tulsa, I said, Dr. Roberts, I've never seen anybody with a ministry like this. I'm trying to get a newsletter out every day. I said, what's the major secrets of your ministry? He didn't speak for a second or two, and he said, Brother Mike, I don't think anybody's ever asked me that in my whole ministry. What? Second most famous ministry in 2,000 years of ministry, and nobody asked him. He said, the greatest secret of my life is sowing a seed for a desired result. Sowing a seed for a desired result. Never heard a preacher say that in my lifetime. You trade something you've been given to God for something He promised you. And then, of course, pretty quick, I realized God had a son. He wanted a family. He planted a son to create a family. Something you have can be traded for something you desire. Then he said the key is expectation. What? You should expect something when you give to people, when you give to God. And then I was reminded of Luke 6:38. Give, and something will be given back to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. Then I realized Malachi 3. God said if I would give Him tithe, He would open the windows of heaven on my life. Well, I never heard anything like that in my lifetime. Then I remember the scripture, he that cometh to God must believe, number 1, that He is, number 2, that He's a rewarder. I'd never heard anything like that in my life. I'd preached all over the world. Nobody ever told me you trade a seed for a harvest. Then when you look through the Bible, it's just all over the place there, all over the place. Let me repeat something. If you don't hear it, you'll never know it. If you don't hear it repetitiously, you'll never remember it. Then he taught something that I never heard, and how important it was to keep repeating. He said, preachers preach too many different sermons. He said, when God calls a preacher, he gives him one focus. He said, there's very few preachers that have two different anointings on them. They have one. Then I remembered Billy Graham, the salvation message. Martin Luther King, the civil rights message. What he told me about interpreting tongues worked in 24 hours with my life. I thought he that speaks the tongue speaketh not to man but to God. But he said, everything I've built in the oral arts ministry, when I interpreted the prayer language back in English, I received instructions for my ministry. 4 secrets I learned from Oral Roberts. I have 3 books on the ministry. Just call 1-800-MINISTRY. 1-800-MINISTRY, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just say, Mike said he had free books for preachers. If you want them, they're yours. Just ask for Ministry 3. I may be back.